Family Guy isn't always a hit. Sometimes it's a total dumpster fire. From Stewie's nightmare pregnancy to Brian turning into a squirrel serial killer, things get weird. Here are the worst Family Guy episodes that made fans scream, "Who approved this?" Starting off with one of the weirdest episodes ever, yeah, that one where Stewie gets pregnant. It kicks off with Stewie and Lois watching TV like a normal day, until Bonnie calls. Lois says she's free in a heartbeat, completely ignoring Stewie.
Hello? Oh, hi, Bonnie. No, I'm not doing anything, just sitting here with the baby.
Stewie's already feeling left out, so he turns to Brian for some bestie time, but Brian has plans.
We should be gluten-free together. Let's go to Whole Foods and buy a bunch of stuff from that weird aisle nobody else goes down. I can't, I got plans. I'll see you later. Oh, sure, maybe another time.
Later on, when Stewie asks him to hang out, he rejects him again. Feeling dumped, Stewie sees Joe and Bonnie being all happy with their baby and gets a terrible idea. If he and Brian had a baby, maybe they'd bond again.
Having a baby seems to have made them closer. Babies save relationships.
Cue the science. Stewie whips up a machine, grabs some of Brian's DNA, and, well, gets himself pregnant with Brian's baby. Oh yeah, it gets that weird. He asks Rupert to watch him as if Rupert's the dad. Later, Stewie brings the big news to Brian, who is clearly not ready for this kind of commitment. He's more worried about how people might react to him getting a toddler boy pregnant.
Brian, we're pregnant! Oh my god!
Brian's about to pass out, but instead, he tries talking Stewie into getting rid of it.
Stewie, you have to get rid of it. Get rid of it?
When Stewie says nope, Brian goes full maniac and tries to induce one. That's quite lovely parenting energy. At last, Brian has to accept this wild experiment of Stewie. Time flies and Stewie's suddenly a full-blown mom-to-be. He drags Brian around for doctor visits, maternity shopping, and cringe photo shoots.
It's like my body is just craving red meat and mint chip ice cream. Isn't that weird?
Gross. Just gross. Things go full disaster at McBurgertown when Stewie's water breaks in line.
Brian, I need you to take me to the hospital. Why? My water just broke.
They don't make it to the hospital, so Brian ends up delivering the entire litter in his car. Yes, a litter. And that's how we get 7 mini Brian-Stewie hybrids. Trying to play house, Stewie convinces Brian to give fatherhood another shot after blowing it with Dylan.
You know, I was actually thinking this could be a chance for you to finally make things right.
But the dream crashes quickly when they notice, some of the kids aren't doing so well. Suddenly, adoption sounds very appealing when they see that their kids have many defects.
This is for the best. Yeah.
Meanwhile, the guys are watching dumb viral videos and want in on the action. They try filming their own, but Joe's impressions are just, let's say, too bland to attract any audience.
And this is 30 impressions in 30 seconds. Show me the money. Oh, behave. Good morning, Vietnam. Wait until they get a load of me, said the Joker.
Then they film monkeys ogling a dancing frog. While that might sound weirdly appealing, the internet doesn't care. In the end, Chris walking across the street gets millions of views just because he was tired after a few steps and stops mid-road to have a chocolate bar. Perfect ending to an episode that makes 0 sense and goes way too far. Now moving on to the second worst episode, where Brian proves he's still just a dog with 0 self-control. It all begins with a neighbour's tragic suicide, but Peter, being Peter, only cares about the free loot.
I want a chainsaw!
So now Peter has a chainsaw, and of course, chaos follows. He immediately slices up Stewie's high chair like it's a log of salami. Then he tries to carve out a Keebler elf home in a tree and ends up injuring himself and killing a squirrel's parents.
Oh my god!
Mom, look!
So now we've got an orphaned baby squirrel. While Meg is only worried about capturing the dead parents of the squirrel to make viral videos, Chris is worried about the baby squirrel. And who steps up? Chris and Stewie. That's right, 2 of the least equipped characters decide to co-parent.
Would you do it with me?
Well, I don't think it...
Meanwhile, Peter goes to Dr. Hartman and discovers he's secretly a tall man who's been crushed down by decades of slouching and failure.
Holy crap!
crap, what happened?
Now with his spine stretched out, Peter is towering over everyone like Slender Man, something he fully embraces at the Quahog Fair. But being tall isn't all fun. He gets kicked off attractions and becomes a menace to kids. He finally begs Lois to put him back to size, which she does by roasting his self-esteem into oblivion.
For starters, you're a failure.
Ah,
You didn't go to college, Daddy pays our mortgage, and you're a terrible husband and father.
ouch!
While all that mess unfolds, Stewie and Chris are loving parent life until Brian goes full dog. As their squirrel takes its first steps, Brian pounces out of nowhere and straight up mauls it to death.
Really tell people.
Cue funeral. Chris gives a heartfelt speech, Stewie handles the reception, and then the blame game kicks in. They argue, go to counselling with Bruce, and nearly break into a fight again over whether the squirrel was a boy or a girl.
It was a true pleasure parenting our squirrel with you, Chris.
Likewise, Stewie.
And although his life was brief, I'll always have very fond memories of him.
Wait, him? It was a her.
No, it wasn't. The squirrel was a boy.
Yep, that line actually aired on TV. But hey, they make up in the end, hugging it out in pure grief. And in the final shot, Stewie breaks down crying after finding a Christmas card with their family squirrel photo. It's oddly touching for a story that started with a chainsaw and ended with a squirrel murder. Moving on to the third bad episode, which tries to reuse tired Trump jokes with even less finesse than before. After a clunky setup in the previous episode, the Griffins pack up and head to Washington DC, where Peter has somehow been hired by the Trump administration. Yep, that's the whole plot.
The main job here is to go in rooms before me to make sure there's no static electricity.
Meg isn't thrilled, and she has an odd reason behind it.
Tomorrow at James Woods High, it's Scoliosis Spine Check Day. It's the one day a year I get touched.
But one Ivanka Trump makeover later, she suddenly becomes hot by Capitol Hill standards, which is really just code for puts on makeup and gets objectified immediately. And then comes the most uncomfortable moment in the episode. Ivana takes her to Trump to introduce her as a friend.
And I gotta say, I'm a huge fan of your board game, and your beef products, and your fraudulent university, and... Oh my god!
And in what was likely intended as satire, but lands like a brick, Trump gropes her. He grabs Meg by the privates. She's horrified, but the more horrifying thing is her family doesn't believe her.
At the White House, President Trump touched me inappropriately.
Yep, that's where we are. An underage character is sexually assaulted, and the gag is that no one listens. When Trump tries it again, this time the family does catch him in the act. So Peter finally grows a spine, quits his job, and vows to be a better person. Except this is Peter Griffin we're talking about. He lasts all of 10 seconds before going back to his usual garbage self.
I quit.
What?
That's right. And you know what else? My days of being mean and insulting are over.
Trump mocks him for it, calling him a failure of a man and role model. So they start fighting. And by fighting, I mean a 7-minute brawl that drags on longer than it ever should have. It starts in the White House, crashes a press conference, and eventually leads to each man stealing a World War II era plane from the Smithsonian. They crash into each other mid-air and somehow land perfectly on top of the Washington Monument. Dangling for their lives, Trump tries to save Peter, but his famously small hands become the punchline that kills the tension. But before anyone can go splat, Justin Trudeau parachutes in like Captain Canada and saves them both with a giant inflatable mattress.
Who put this here?
I did. Sure hope that's okay.
Because, sure, why not? As the sun sets, Peter and Trump put aside their differences in a forced moment of reconciliation that makes zero sense based on the previous 20 minutes. The episode wraps up with the Griffins given a political message.
Well, we had a lot of fun this week and changed 0 minds.
Moving to one of the worst and laziest Family Guy episodes ever, the jokes don't land, the story is weak, and it ends in the dumbest way possible. It begins with Lois and Peter watching Legos with Stewie. Then, Peter suddenly hears a train horn and decides to leave this life.
Well, that's my train. Time to disappear from this life completely.
When they leave to check on Chris, Stewie admits that he was scared of Lego's movie. Chris keeps playing his recorder as if he's the train's horn operator.
Chris, stop! That sounds terrible.
Yeah, you can't just play one note over and over.
Turns out his music teacher quit, so Lois randomly becomes the new teacher. That's the whole setup. Then comes Connie D'Amico. She's barely in the show anymore, and this episode reminds us why.
What is music to you?
Stupid.
She acts up in Lois's class, gets sent to the principal, and ends up expelled.
You suck!
Connie doesn't take it well and starts messing with Lois's life to get revenge. She makes Lois angry in the supermarket, and when Lois reacts back, people start recording her outburst. Eventually, Lois gets mad and threatens her. Not long after that, Connie is reported dead in a car crash. The cops say the brakes were cut and Lois becomes the main suspect.
Lois Griffin, I'm sorry, but you're under arrest. I'm gonna have to take you down to the station.
Meanwhile, Meg is happy that they won't have to take the quiz because Lois was arrested. Peter decides to prove Lois is innocent. He tries a few dumb things that go nowhere. But none of it matters because Lois suddenly comes home. She's free. Why? Because Connie faked her death. And how did Connie do it? She put a blonde wig on Peppa Pig and sent her off a cliff in a car.
Excuse me, folks. Do you have a daughter named Peppa?
Yes.
You're gonna want to sit down.
Yes, that's their big joke. Then, at the end, Lois turns into some kind of weird prison version of herself and jumps Peter. Because I guess that's how they wanted to finish this mess? Nothing in this episode works. Lois goes to jail for 2 seconds, Connie fakes her death for no reason, and the final joke is just plain gross. Let's move on to another slow and pointless episode from Family Guy. It starts with Stewie having a good day at daycare and telling Rupert all about it. He decides to make a cute collage of their time together.
I'm going to do something really nice for Rupert.
But while digging through old photos, he finds out Rupert used to belong to Chris, and maybe even Peter before that. Stewie asks Rupert about this whole multi-generational stuffed toy thing.
Look, I don't see why this has to change anything between us. We both have a past.
But everything surely changes between them. Feeling betrayed, Stewie gives Rupert back to Chris, who doesn't care at all.
I'll just leave him here. I hope you're both very happy together, Chris.
Stewie then tries to move on by bonding with a stuffed giraffe, that flops. He tries to buy a new bear, total failure. He even tries to fake a connection. It's just sad.
Remember when that bear used to be yours, Chris? Oh, you used to take him with you every...
Just shut your mouth, you hear me?
Stewie tries to have a heart-to-heart with Brian about the Rupert situation, but his emotions just keep getting worse. Eventually, Stewie checks the hidden nanny cam inside Rupert and sees Chris actually being sweet to the bear and missing Stewie.
Good night, Skippy. Just a warning, I had some bad experiences at camp, so...
He even goes on a vacation to forget about Rupert, but he keeps imagining other teddy bears as Rupert. But instead of fixing things like a normal person, Stewie loses it. He rents a lake house, invites Chris and Rupert over for dinner, and straight up plans to murder them both. Yes, Stewie goes from sad about a teddy bear to homicidal maniac in 5 minutes. He paddles Chris out onto the lake, knocks him out, and throws him overboard. But before it's too late, he finds a message on the nanny cam. Chris was going to give Rupert back because he cares. Feeling guilty, Stewie saves Chris and gets him to the hospital. At the very end, the doctor comes in and weirdly suggests taking Chris's heart, because that's apparently the kind of joke we're ending on.
I think we can get a heart from this kid. Oh, nope, he's up.
Moving on to one of the most awkward episodes in Family Guy history. This episode claims to be a lost one discovered in the Griffin family basement, supposedly taking place in March 2007, just before O.J. Simpson's real-life armed robbery arrest. But honestly, it probably should have stayed lost. It starts off simple enough. Lois leaves Peter in charge of babysitting Stewie. But of course, Peter invites the guys over instead for a game of truth or dare, which quickly goes off the rails.
Hey, keep it down. It's just 2 guys making out. Relax.
Stewie, go to bed.
Cleveland and Joe end up making out, and Stewie somehow ends up on the roof trying to fix the satellite dish alone. Peter completely ignores it. He's too busy reading a Nick Jonas magazine. Then, a chaotic pillow fight breaks out, and poor Lois gets punched in the nose by accident when she gets home.
Oh my God, sorry, Lois.
Stewie's still stuck on the roof, and Peter cuts away with another painfully long Mr. Kanye Twitty gag. Then things get really weird. Peter finds a forgotten raffle ticket from 1989 that earns him the chance to play golf with any celebrity, and he picks O.J. Simpson.
Peter, he murdered 2 people. What?
At first, he's totally clueless about the murder accusations, but Joe walks him through the details, complete with a dramatic Dust in the Wind music montage. So what do? They wire Peter up and send him to get O.J. to confess during a golf game.
The only thing I'm guilty of is a few bad movies.
And that makes up for the other murder. I am sold. You are so witty and charming.
That fails spectacularly, but instead of cutting ties, Peter decides Simpson is innocent and invites him to stay at the Griffin house.
Peter, are you out of your mind bringing O.J. Simpson into our home?
Everyone except Stewie is against it, especially Brian. But Peter insists on giving OJ a chance. So Peter throws a party to show the town how nice OJ is. But instead of a warm welcome, they're met with a full-blown angry mob. That's when Simpson gives an emotional, heartfelt speech about being misunderstood. And for a moment, it actually works. Until the last second, OJ pulls out a knife, kills 3 people right in front of everyone, and runs off as the town chases him down. Peter, now dead inside, just shrugs and says,
Oh, I guess he did do it.
Moving on to another cringe-worthy episode in the history of Family Guy. It starts off with Peter dragging the family couch outside to drink with the guys. After the couch goes missing because someone thought it was trash, the group decides to start a neighborhood watch. So far, not terrible, but then Peter gets a gun.
Got him.
Oh, how'd you get him so quick?
That was easy.
That's when the real problem starts. Peter sees someone entering Cleveland's house through a window and without a second thought, shoots them. Turns out, it was Cleveland Jr., just going through the window so he wouldn't let the air conditioning out. At the hospital, Peter tries to apologise, but Cleveland and Donna call him a racist and cut him off completely. The town turns against Peter after Cleveland goes on live TV and labels it a hate crime. Suddenly, everything is about race, and Peter is consistently trying and failing to prove he's not racist.
Well, this is just great, Peter. Everyone in town hates us now.
He tries bringing gifts, accidentally burns Cleveland's house down, tries to save the family, but people think he's threatening them. The police then arrest Peter just to keep the peace, not because he's guilty.
Oh, thank God, Joe. Are you here to give me the deposit for the shirts?
No, Peter, I'm here to place you under arrest for the attempted murder of Cleveland Jr.
Then comes the most insulting part. Peter's father-in-law hires a sleazy lawyer who uses rap lyrics and Cleveland Jr.'s name to paint him as a criminal in court. It's clearly satire, but it's so lazy and out of touch that it ends up punching down instead of being clever. Peter's found innocent, but Cleveland's done with him. But of course, the writers couldn't resist the fake happy ending. A mob shows up to attack Cleveland's family, but Peter jumps in and says the shooting was his fault and not racially motivated. Just dumb fear.
Cleveland Jr. doesn't deserve any of this. All those things you heard about Cleveland Jr. were lies. He didn't do anything to me. He's a good kid.
This moment could have been genuine, but then Cleveland randomly says he shot his own son just to shut the mob up, because apparently black on black crime makes everyone walk away.
Wait a minute. Peter didn't shoot my son. I did.
Really? That's how the writers resolve all that? Moving on to another worst episode because, wow, it's a mess from the start. You can tell things are off when the family's supposed to be prepping for a hurricane, but instead of, I don't know, grabbing flashlights or locking down windows, Brian suddenly decides to take magic mushrooms.
These are mushrooms. It's a psychedelic drug. Makes you see weird things and feel happy for a few hours.
Like, yeah, what better time to start tripping than during an incoming natural disaster? That's real top-tier decision-making from everyone's favourite sarcastic dog. Even after listening to what those mushrooms are, Stewie still remains cool about it and even urges him to take them.
So, go ahead.
And of course, things spiral fast. Brian goes full meltdown mode. He's hallucinating, freaking out, and completely losing grip on reality. At one point, he even cuts off his own ear, like that somehow makes sense in his mushroom-fueled brain. It's not funny, it's not deep, it's just chaotic. And who's left to deal with the fallout? Stewie. Little Stewie ends up playing nurse for the night, babysitting this confused, sweaty, paranoid mess of a dog. He's trying to calm Brian down, stop him from hurting himself, and basically keep the house from turning into a full-blown disaster zone. It's a full-time job and Stewie didn't even clock in. Meanwhile, the rest of the Griffins? Yeah, they're doing what they always do, bullying Meg.
Damn it, Meg, will you stop that? That is so annoying.
But this time, Meg finally hits her breaking point. She snaps. She stands up and calls everyone out. Chris gets dragged for never having her back. Lois gets reminded of all the sketchy stuff she's done over the years. And Peter, well, Meg calls him a waste of a man and doesn't hold back. It's probably the most real moment Meg's ever had on the show. And for a second, you think she might actually get some respect. But no, of course not. Instead of letting her have that moment, the writers make her feel bad for standing up for herself.
Maybe it's just my lot in life to provide. Maybe if I feel bad, they don't have to.
She ends up apologizing to them, the people who have made her life miserable for years. And just like that, the whole thing ends in this fake, feel-good group hug like everything's fine now.
You're right. It's all my fault.
What?
And then, to top it all off, Stewie turns to the camera and gives a weird "don't do drugs" message, like the episode was secretly a public service announcement the whole time. Moving on to another Family Guy episode where everyone's fake and petty and no one learns a thing. Starting off with Peter and Lois falling head over heels for a new spot in town, his and her restaurant, because apparently the best way to bond as a couple is to sit at the same table while doing completely separate things.
Check it out. I can drink beer, watch sports, and play Pop-A-Shot right here at the table.
And I can drink wine and scroll through Bonnie's Facebook, secretly enjoying that she has an ugly baby.
If that's not a perfect summary of modern relationships, what is? While they're bonding over drinks and trash-talking infants, Brian is losing his mind trying to write. But the noise outside isn't a car alarm or Peter's yelling. It's Stewie building the least expected structure ever. A treehouse that's both a man cave and a dance studio.
I'm having these guys put up a treehouse. Sort of like a man cave / dance studio kind of deal.
Yes, because when you think of masculinity and ballet, you think of Stewie Griffin. When Brian and Chris finally check it out, they pretend to be nice, only to roast the poor kid the second they leave like they're auditioning for Mean Girls.
I'm sorry, he wants us to come watch a movie up there? On a Vizio?
Oh, is that what he was saying? I couldn't hear a word over those floorboards creaking.
Oh my god, Creek City.
Stewie overhears it all, obviously, and falls into a full-blown insecurity spiral. Time for a makeover montage. On the other side of town, Lois and Peter get a little too into their therapy homework when Lois learns a hypnosis trick to spice things up.
You really don't remember? Wow, that hypnosis works.
Peter turns into a yes-man zombie, and it works, until the trigger phase randomly pops up at her parents' house, turning foreplay into a full-blown public meltdown. Everyone else is dying of second-hand embarrassment. Back in Treehouse Saga 2.0, Stewie unveils the Pinterest perfect upgrade, complete with mood lighting and baseball memorabilia. Brian and Chris again compliment him, then again trash him behind his back like it's their full-time job.
Literally not one thing about that place says Stewie.
It's like he Googled man cave and said that.
Brutal. Stewie finally hits his limit and goes full psycho baby, tying them up in the treehouse and confronting them. This is basically Stewie's villain origin story, or his audition for Saw Preschool Edition. Brian and Chris manage to weasel out by pretending they want to throw a party up there. Stewie falls for it, only for them to mock him again the second they're free.
I can't believe he bought it!
Like we would ever do Eric Nifty 50 up there.
Poor Stewie, trying so hard to impress fake friends who would rather host a party in a dumpster than his man cave. Moving to another worst episode trying so hard to be deep that it wraps around into total nonsense. The episode starts off with Stewie being sent to therapy after pushing a kid down the stairs, and instead of the show exploring that in a funny or interesting way, it turns into a mini stage play where Stewie chats with Dr. Pritchfield like he's on a Netflix drama. Stewie starts with some forced small talk and quickly launches into what he thinks is his charming personality, bragging about his fake British accent. But when the doctor doesn't even hear the accent, Stewie spirals. That's right, this is the emotional crisis.
Well, I've often been told that I have a British accent.
Oh?
That's all you're going to say? Oh?
What is it you'd like me to say, Stewie?
That I have a British accent.
Not the stair pushing, not the loneliness. No, it's that someone called out his phony accent. Groundbreaking stuff. From there, the episode tries to get psychological. Like, really psychological. Stewie randomly starts psychoanalyzing the doctor, dragging up the man's insecurities, relationship problems, and his whole marriage dynamic after glancing at a single photo.
I see you're on vacation in Rio de Janeiro in this photo with your partner, I'm guessing? Or is he your husband?
Because apparently, Stewie's now part toddler, part licensed therapist. Then we get to the big meltdown. The doc calls him lonely, and Stewie just full on breaks down crying, like we're watching This Is Us Griffin edition. Barbara, the assistant, comes in with tissues. It's played so dramatically you half expect sad piano music to start swelling in the background. And then Doc tries to take him back to the stairs incident.
You pushed a classmate down the stairs.
It was an accident.
Turns out, Stewie pushed the kid because he liked him. But wait, he's not gay. He swears he's straight. So straight, he pulls out his own hair and sings show tunes from Hamilton while sobbing into his sleeve. Turns out, Stewie needed acknowledgement for being talented, and when Doc appreciates his intelligence, he becomes emotional again.
It must be difficult for you, Stewie, being so intelligent.
It is.
Stewie tells Doc he loves to sing, so Doc asks him to do it. but his little concert has less singing and more snot coming out of his nose. Just when you think the episode might go somewhere with this sudden burst of honesty, the doctor has a heart attack. Seriously, mid-session. And what does Stewie do? Hand him the meds? Call for help?
There's one person that does know the real me. And that's you.
Nope, he just watches him die. Like, cold. He literally lets the guy die because he's the only one who truly knew Stewie. What? To top it all off, after this grim scene, the doc's voicemail chimes in with a message from his husband asking for a divorce, just to twist the knife a little more.
It's Michael. I want a divorce.
Because why not throw in a tragic breakup right after a literal death? And then, of course, we end on Stewie waking up in the middle of the night screaming. He begs Brian to sleep in his bed, clearly traumatized, but we never even find out if it really happened. Was it a dream? A metaphor? Who knows? Moving on to arguably the darkest and most disturbing Family Guy episode ever made. The episode starts off with Peter asking Lois to pack breakfast for him to go on a fishing trip with his friends. Peter and Joe end up the only ones fishing as they can't have a good conversation without the others.
Jeez, I've never tried to make conversation with just Joe before. This is brutal.
At last, when they can't talk about something meaningful, they just decide to look for Quagmire. When Peter and Joe return from a fishing trip without Quagmire, they become concerned and go to check on him only to find him unconscious from an autoerotic asphyxiation attempt gone wrong. They instantly get him down to check his pulse. They rush him to the hospital, but it turns out Quagmire is in a coma.
How is he?
He's in a coma, Lois.
His sister Brenda arrives and helps him wake from his coma by singing an old childhood rhyme.
October 31st, 2011.
Where am I?
She's accompanied by her boyfriend Jeff, who immediately shows signs of being loud, controlling, and verbally abusive. Brenda agrees to take care of Glenn during his recovery, but Jeff's constant yelling keeps the neighborhood awake. Even Quagmire is worried about Brenda and couldn't sleep.
Where do you get off calling me a deadbeat in front of your brother?
No, Jeff, all I said was that you were in between jobs.
Well, it wouldn't matter if you would just pick up that night shift at the prison.
Lois grows concerned and invites Brenda out to lunch to talk. Brenda insists on wearing sunglasses indoors, and when Lois asks her to take them off, she sees a bruise on Brenda's eye. Brenda downplays it and defends Jeff, but Lois is clearly disturbed by how much abuse she's excusing.
You know, you don't have to stay with a man who treats you that way.
Oh, Jeff's sweet. You don't see how soft and gentle he hits me when we're alone.
Brenda keeps saying that they have a complicated relationship and Jeff actually cares about her, but Lois isn't buying it. Later at the Drunken Clam, Peter, Joe and Quagmire discuss the situation. Joe explains that unless Brenda reports Jeff, the police can't do anything. They decide to hold an intervention, but it mostly falls apart until Quagmire makes an emotional plea. Brenda seems moved until Jeff walks in and pressures her into announcing that they're engaged and expecting a child.
Everyone, I have wonderful news. Jeff and I are getting married.
You're getting married?
Yeah, but only 'cause she's pregnant.
That night, Quagmire is still worried, and when Peter jokes that they should just beat Jeff up, Quagmire takes the idea seriously. Joe is hesitant at first, but after witnessing Jeff hit Brenda again, he agrees to help. They come up with a plan to take Jeff on a late night hunting trip and make his death look like an accident. While in the woods, Jeff becomes suspicious of the invite. Peter nearly gives the plan away, and Jeff eventually turns the tables by pulling a gun on Quagmire. He knocks Peter and Joe unconscious and forces Quagmire into Peter's car, taking him deeper into the forest. Jeff threatens to kill him, but Quagmire challenges him to a fight without weapons. Jeff agrees and beats Quagmire badly before trying to strangle him. Thinking Quagmire is dead, Jeff begins digging a grave. But just then, the car headlights turn on. Quagmire is still alive and behind the wheel. He drives the car into Jeff, pinning him against a tree and killing him. The next morning, the group returns home. Brenda is upset that Jeff hasn't come back. To protect her from the truth, they give her a fake note claiming Jeff left her. She breaks down crying, still thinking he cared for her. As the scene closes, Peter casually remarks that he'd like to kill someone else next, this time joking about Mort Goldman. It's the kind of episode that makes you question if the writers forgot they were making a comedy show. Which one do you think was the worst Family Guy episode? Let me know in the comments down below. Remember to like and subscribe. Bye for now, I'll see you in the next one.